welcome to the first episode of the African Voices Unmuted podcast, where we break the silence and bring stories that matter to life. In the next few episodes, we're diving into conversations surrounding Movember, exploring the importance of men's health and challenging the stigmas that impact our lives. Today, we're taking the discussion purely from the perspective of the student body here at the Erasmus University, who exchange varying viewpoints from different backgrounds. This is a limited edition podcast brought to you by ASA, the Association of Students of African Heritage in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. Yes, this podcast is to aim to break taboos and to start conversation with your friends. The idea started with me and Sean, the vice president of ASA, who happen to be very close friends and have a quite open friendship where we talk about difficult topics from time to time. And now that we have platforms as leaders of the this community, we wanted to use our platform to open this conversation to the wide world and anyone who's willing to hear it. Before I give the mic to Sean to elaborate what Movember is, I'm not here alone. I have three people sitting here with me. The first one is Sean, then we have Matthew, and we have Ali, who will all now introduce themselves.
Yeah, well, I'll quickly introduce myself. I don't want to take too much shine away from our highly esteemed best friends and guests. My name is Sean. I am the vice president. And yes, I do work with Timothy. The rumors are true. I am the vice president. And now we are going to introduce our guests in alphabetical order with Ali, our Arab Association.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Akut, and I'm president of Arabs Association Rotterdam. I'm from Cairo, Egypt, and I'm 19 years old, almost 20. And today we're going to be talking about this very sensitive topic and definitely a taboo topic in Arab society and in Egypt. And specifically, Egypt is both an African country and an Arab country. So, and it's where I'm from. So that's where I'm going to be diving deep into today. Yeah. Matthew?
Yes. Thank you for having me. Hello, my name is Matthew. I'm the president of the Dutch Caribbean Association, or shorter DCA. In our community, we also aim to bring the warmth of the Caribbean to our members and make it a home far from home for our members from the Caribbean. And also in the Caribbean, just like Ali mentioned, there's a lot of stigma, a lot of taboo surrounding the topic around mental health, health for men, and etc. So it's definitely a very great conversation to deconstruct the stigma. So I'm very excited to dive into the topic today.
Yes, thank you. I'll also introduce myself because I forgot to do that. I'm Timothy. I'm 19 years old, and I'm the president of ASA. And yes, I'm also very excited. The name of this episode is Roots and Reality, the Culture's Influence on Manhood. So, when we hear this title, what do we think?
Well, just a quick disclaimer to everyone watching. Guys, when you listen to us, we're really just four men here just talking about life. No expertise except our own lived experiences. And yeah, this is going to be really entertaining. But when I hear that title, I think of, not going to lie, the TV show Roots. But I really think of what it means to grow up from where you're from and how that's going to develop who you are. What do you think, Ali?
I mean, for me, I think growing up in Egypt, there was a very big distinction between growing up wanting just you're a male and then becoming a man. So it's very different, not because on your passport it says that you're a male, it means that you're a man. There are things that you have to go through as a man. There are things that you have to do, certain qualities and certain characteristics that you have to become a man. And those are things that all of us have experienced growing up. Things that can be from not having enough money, going through a heartbreak, things like that help you develop your character, as well as the qualities that you have growing up as a man, which means being respectful, being considerate, understanding, and things like that. So that's from the perspective of growing up in Egypt, where you'd have to earn and prove that you really are worthy of being a man in society.
I think that's definitely relatable for all of us, that there's different expectations on what it is to be a man and when you can achieve that after having certain qualities match you? Do you
Yes,
relate
definitely.
to that?
Definitely for example, I'm from Curacao, so it's one of the Caribbean islands of the Dutch kingdom. And in Curacao, just like Ali said, there's a lot of confinements to what it means to be a man. But something very beautiful that I've seen over the past few years, although it's very similar, is that we have a trajectory in life, and for most students that come from Curacao, which is very straightforward. You go to school, you go to university, you come back, you provide for your family. And over time, you've seen how these things have slowly been changing. There's been a lot of change recently with students, or like with men taking different paths in life. Going outside of their comfort zone, which is something that it's kind of getting outside of the box
Yeah.
that society has put us in, or like the expectations we have put for ourselves in reality, which is something very interesting to also look at, the just growing outside of that, which is
Yeah, 100%. Something that just came to mind is the expectations, or if you were to compare what the young version of you thought what a man is to what you now think what a man is, what would you say, or what would you describe?
Well, interesting. I don't know. For me, growing up, my biggest role model has always been my mom. And I also had my dad that I always looked up to. But I think growing up and like going to puberty and going abroad, going away from my parents at a very young age, around 16, I already left home. I learned a lot about independence and the beauty of friendship and all these things. And it has really changed my way of thinking of what it means to be a man and like fitting in different like roles. I believe I don't know, how do you say it? Like, some people might believe that they have to follow certain criteria, such as, like I said, some people have like, okay, I have to get married by this age, I have to do this, I have to do that. And like, I, have grown to understand that, life is so much more fluid. There are so many more opportunities, so many more things to achieve, so many more things to experience, which is how I want to live my life. I just want to, go with the flow, see what life brings. And I think that's a beautiful, not a philosophy, but something nice that people can consider or should, feel free, have the freedom to choose their life for themselves, which is,
I think that's a wonderful thing, Sean.
Did you ever have like a moment where you actually were like, maybe the way I was thinking back in the day isn't actually valid anymore? Like, did you ever have that moment where everything just clicked?
Well, I didn't have like a specific epiphany, but it was definitely from the moment I left home to when I went to boarding school. Was the moment where I realized, oh, yeah, maybe there's so much more to life than
Yeah, I hear that.
What about you? Like maybe coming to university is.
I mean, for me, coming to university was definitely a big step. Having lived with my family for most of my life and living in Egypt for most of my life, the move to Europe, it was a shock. It was definitely something where I'd had to adapt to and then learn to become independent and learn to do things on my own, which I think at first, it's difficult for a 17 or 18-year-old, but then that also helps you into becoming the man that you want to be, who's going to eventually one day open a house and be able to provide for his family. So I think the experience of living alone, for me, having grown in a very traditional Egyptian family, grown up in a traditional Egyptian family, for me, moving and living alone in a European country and then having to live in a house for the first time and then having to do chores I've never done before. So things like these, I think they really help you into becoming the man that you eventually want to be, who's gonna be able to open a house where basically you're in charge of your house, you're the man of the house, you're able to provide for your family, you're able to go to work, send your kids to school. I think that's a very good start for learning these qualities, maybe.
Did you ever have like the chores where, you're doing them and you're like, wow, I have to do this like every day? Like for me personally, it was doing my laundry. Like
Every 2 weeks or what?
I could do my laundry, put it in the washing machine, wash my clothes by hand or whatever. But then after time, you're like, dang, every day, like it's not the same as when you're at home, because you'd have someone who can like...
Yeah, exactly. For me at home in Egypt, I have everything done for me compared to here, from like all the chores, from laundry to food to ironing, everything. And so having to do that every single day or almost every single day was definitely something that was very important towards self-discipline, towards time management, and just learning to do these things that I'm eventually going to always need in my life.
you learn to value these different
Yeah,
things that
yeah.
people have done for you in the past,
Exactly.
and
Mhm.
yeah, I think
And
that
then
also-
learning to manage them with studies as well and moving to a new country. Like, it's definitely a very important experience and a very life-changing point in every man's life, I think.
truly.
Yeah, because it's very easy to have expectations or ideas of what it is like to be a man, as like a young boy looking up to maybe role models or your dad or something like that. But we were children at that time, so we forget that you're not only a man, but you're also adult. So those adult responsibilities that everyone has, like what you said, folding your laundry, doing your groceries, things like that, also.
Yeah, those are
Come
things
with a
for
lot of-
adults in general, not
Yeah.
just, yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And what about you, Sean? How do you think your perception of manhood has changed over the years?
I would say, obviously, just like looking through life. I think for me, my perceptions of manhood were always, they weren't streamlined. They were never what everyone else had. So I would say the way people would look at things like, a man can't cry, aren't the same way that I would look at it.
Mhm.
Admittedly, you know, the crying part is something where I haven't done as often, but I'm not going to look down on a man that's crying.
Mhm.
That's kind of how I see it. I'm saying, okay, you know, I imagine lots of people have like different stress tolerances, and like there's so much going on in someone's life that you can't really just pass judgment like, you shouldn't be crying at that.
No.
So I'm just like, oh, okay, yeah. No, this is different. If he's crying, yeah, he's going through it. And even if it's like something minor, like he dropped his phone and like gets cracked, and now he's crying. It's just like I'm just thinking, I'm like, yeah, I can tell this guy's having a really bad day.
Yeah.
And just like, you know, just give him a hand, and you're like, yeah, bro, it's gonna be all right. It's gonna be all right. And I guess that's how I looked at it. But I have a question for you all.
Yeah.
Why did you agree to do this podcast with us?
Okay, so obviously coming from the Dutch Caribbean, so from a Caribbean island, which is a community where there's a lot of stigma still. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of taboos around. And personally, I didn't know about Movember beforehand, which the moment you guys sent me the invitation, I immediately like started looking it up. And it's like, okay, this is really interesting to talk about men's health, men's mental health, testicular cancer, and all these things that have to do with, with men getting the recognition to or feel empowered to look up these things or feel connected to a community where they don't necessarily have to hide something because of the social standards we have set up for ourselves in society, which is something really good to deconstruct. And yeah, I wanted to just also be an advocate for that. I thought it was really nice, the movement and having the advocacy, being an advocate for us to start the conversation at least around in my community. I think that's the most important part why I decided to come.
Again, thank you
Of course.
for joining on
Of
the
course.
podcast.
For me, I've always like heard about and known about Movember since I've been in school, but I haven't like we were aware of it, but we never talked about it, or it wasn't an issue that was of importance to us. And then after finishing school and then traveling to another country and living to another country, that really helped me see different perspectives of the world and where Movember is here in the Netherlands. Movember is more known, and so I got to learn more about it. And so when you guys sent me the invitation, thank you guys so much for having me today. Yeah.
Of course.
Of course, I thought it was something interesting and something I wanted to talk about, considering it's something not very known in Egypt. So growing up, I wasn't really aware of men's mental health or Movember, even though now the government is taking a lot of measures towards helping things from drug use to men's mental health awareness hotlines, things like that. The government is doing a lot of measures now, but before growing up, it wasn't something that we were really aware of or familiar of. So now it was something that I'm very interested to discuss with you guys about, to see your different perspectives from the countries, because like you guys are from African countries and I'm also from an African country, so it's like, but like I'm in the north, you guys are central southern, and so I wanted to see how such a large continent, but we could have different views and similar views. And I wanted to know from your perspective as well, from Dutch Caribbean countries in the Caribbean. And so, yeah, I really thought this podcast was a very good idea, and I'm really honored to be here with you guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say something. I think there's a lot of there's an intersectionality for all of us.
100%.
100%, because obviously you're from Egypt, an African country, but you're in the Arab Association. You guys are from the African Association, and I'm from the Caribbean Association. And well, as you may or may not know, obviously. Colonization has had a lot of impact on our
All of our countries.
exactly on all of our countries. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it's really interesting that something we can talk about how the impacts of colonization have affected us when we talk specifically on this topic. It's more the effects are more visible in our regions than in any other Western or European country because of the effects or the long-standing like terms of what has happened in our regions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something interesting to talk about the intersectionality. I think we have a lot in common when it comes to
Yeah.
stigmas, when it comes to taboos. But yeah, also I wanted to say we were talking a minute ago about what is defined for us being a man, and I think it's also very interesting to like keep in mind. For example, myself, I don't come from a more like traditional background, because growing up, also like being part of the LGBTQ community, you also are not necessarily sure where you stand with some of the traditional views. You feel like you're going against some morals. You feel like you're going against some views, and it's not necessarily always like that. So also being part of this podcast also like helps you learn a bit more of where you stand and what things are definitely important.
Yeah, because something I also wanted to highlight is, for one, Movember is not only about mental health, but also about prostate cancer and testicular cancer. But we'll have episodes coming this month where we'll dive more into that with the respective experts. But the main reason I really wanted to do this podcast is because I feel like there's so many young boys or young men out there that don't know that there are people out there like them that exist. So
Absolutely.
diversity and representation is very, very, very important because, for example, when we were growing up, for example, I'll talk for myself, feelings and emotions and mental health and topics like that, there was not much space for that because we weren't, like my parents were never taught how to deal with that. And I, as a result, also was never taught or not as much as I would have liked or, things like that.
Something you gotta learn yourself, right?
So things you gotta learn yourself, and one of those things that you can do is do research and have conversations with your friends about it, which is why we're having this podcast. And what you said about intersectionality is also very true because everyone's experience is very different. Like might be people listening to this like, oh, I've never had struggles with mental health, but there's people like, finally someone is talking about it and I can relate to something. And as you said, for you, someone from the LGBTQ community who may feel like it's taboo or has issues coming out or stuff like that, is very important that we keep talking about it. And
Exactly.
that's the one thing I will keep repeating
Pushing
throughout
for.
the whole podcast. But yes, onto the topic of mental health experiences. Maybe in the past, maybe we can briefly share our first interaction with mental problems or mental issues, if anyone.
I mean, I can talk about past experiences I had when going through like a tough time or when I'm stressed about an exam coming up or things like that. So 2-3 years ago, I used to be a professional swimmer. And so sometimes I'd have times where I'm leading up to a swim meet or a national championship. And I also have exams coming up and then exams that would determine where I'd go for uni, for example,
Yeah.
important exams. And so I had to learn to deal with all the pressures that I had from wanting to win at the competition and going to 5 a.m. practices every day, and so having to sleep at 8 p.m. and then having to study every day and go to school at the same time and go to the gym. And so that was a very important time of my life because it helped me learn how to overcome all of these challenges and then learn how to deal with any stress or anxiety you feel, and then being able to control that, because that was just a very small glimpse of what life is like being a man or being someone who's very busy and has a lot on their plate, and that is something that I like doing. And so that was a very important time for me to learn how to deal with all of these feelings that I had, and then being able to stay focused on both of them so that I'm able to get the grades I want and to get the results I want at the competition. And so for me, that was when I would sometimes struggle, and then that's when I had to learn to do things that would calm my mind before a tournament, for example, or before a championship, so that I'm focused when I do go into the race or when I do go into the exam, and I'm not just stressed out the whole time.
And so, what feelings would you be feeling when you say you would be stressed? Like, what are the sensations or something?
I mean, for sure, the day of final for the national competition, for instance, that you'd wake up, you're really scared that day, and then it's in a weekend and you have an exam in 3 days. So the important thing is you're really afraid for what you have now, but you're also afraid for something in 3 days. So you have to learn to focus on what you have now, because today worrying about the exam is not going to make any difference.
That's true.
So yeah, the feelings, it's like a lot of feelings, from scared to stressed to afraid, a lot of things that is this going to go wrong? And then sometimes you mess up both of them because you're worried about it. So it's very important to learn how to deal with these issues if you have a lot going on, or if you're going through tough times, or if you're going through anything in general. You should learn how to deal with these things, because life is very hard and it's only going to keep getting worse, especially as you grow up. So yeah, that's something that's very important.
And can I ask you?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's probably a lot of listeners, me included, who have had a lot of aspirations in things that aren't necessarily what we're doing anymore. But I don't know your story, but I'm curious. What happened to the swimming dream?
Yeah, that was a decision I decided to take because at first I wanted to travel abroad to the US to continue swimming there, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore and wanted to focus on my studies the last 6 months of school, because I didn't want, I changed and I wanted to travel to Europe instead. So that's when I decided I shouldn't continue anymore. And yeah, I'm glad that I did, because even though I had a lot of amazing times and I won a lot of competitions, national and local and regional, yeah, so it was the correct choice, I believe, because right now I'm doing something that I want to do more here at Erasmus University.
So you never feel any regrets, oh, imagine I was there, bro. I could have been the next Chad McClough or Michael.
I mean, I definitely, I still watch the Olympics, I still watch all the world championships, and I still love the sport. But I do think, now it's a different phase of my life where I have to focus on other things and things that I do like more. But I do, of course, go swimming from time to time, and I do go back and visit my team when I'm back in Egypt. So, yeah.
That's very nice.
It's always going to be a very important and very good part of my life.
Can I ask you something? Maybe someone who listens to this podcast could use it as a tip. Like you said, you need to learn how to deal with feelings of stress and anxiety. Could you maybe give an example of how you used to deal with it? Because it's easier said than done to say how to deal with mental problems or things that are just hard.
I mean, I think that is a very large topic to dive into. So let's just talk about it briefly, because lots of people have each person has a different way to deal with things. Yeah. Some people find that through listening to music. Some people find that through praying. Some people find that through negative things such as excessive use of alcohol or drugs to go through their pains. And so for me, what I like to do is I like to get my mind off of things. I like to do the things that relax me. So for example, I can wake up early in the morning before everyone, when everyone's sleeping and it's really calm outside, go out, go for a run, have breakfast, listen to music you like to listen to, pray, no matter what your religion is. Do the things that in general in your day-to-day life that they make you feel better and that you always look to in your day. So for example, I'm in a lecture now and I'm looking to go home to watch the certain TV show because I like it. If you're stressed or you're going through a hard time or you're going through any mental health issues, then do the things that relax you. But at the same time, you can't just waste all of your time. One of the most important things actually that I heard, I think 2-3 weeks ago, by President-elect Trump is you're never going to be depressed if you have a lot of things to do. So if you're always busy, if you're always doing things, if you're always outside, for me that actually applies and it works, because whenever I have things to do, you never have time to think about all the problems. You never have time to overthink at night about any issues you have. So whenever you're busy, in the morning you go to the university, and then you go to the gym, and then you go to work, and then you meet friends. Whenever you have a lot of things going on, it really helps if you like doing that, of course. If you
But
like,
isn't that also just distracting yourself from the issue that's going on within your mind?
yeah, I mean, you shouldn't completely neglect the issue. I mean, from like your day to day, what you're doing, it should be filled with things to do that get your mind off of it. But you should definitely have time to reflect, and like,
Yeah,
if you're a person that goes to therapy, then that's when you should be reflecting, for
Okay.
instance, about
Absolutely.
it.
I
Yeah.
think also there is like another aspect to it. I think a lot of people who deal with depression or any other type of mental health disorder also kind of sometimes they put up this like facade, like they put up this face where they pretend to be okay or doing well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's a very big problem. I
Exactly, and
think,
that's a big problem. And because it is such a big taboo, or like because men rarely talk about these topics, they just go on about their life, you know, keeping in these things
Mhm.
and not, you know, ever working on it or expressing it. And that's when you generate generational trauma. That's when you don't work on yourself, and then you find these things to follow back in your children and then your children's children.
Mhm.
That's why I'm a very big advocate for everyone deserves to go to therapy, and everyone
Mhm.
has to go to therapy or like visit a therapist once in a while. So I can talk about my experiences. I think you asked the same
Yeah, yeah,
question. So what was my first interaction with mental health? Personally, I'm very grateful and very glad to not have any mental health issues that I am aware of, at least.
That's also a good thing,
Yes.
being aware of
Exactly.
what's going on
Mhm.
in your mind, because it's also quite difficult to recognize, for example, if you don't go to therapy, or
Exactly.
some people who don't
Exactly.
believe in it.
So thankfully, I don't know that I have any mental health issue. However, when I was in boarding school, 2 years in a row, I organized together with some friends a week called the Mental Health Focus Week. Because being in boarding school, being so far away from your parents, having some like longing to go back home,
Mhm.
things might not be right, school pressure, social pressures, friendship issues, you know what I mean? Everyone has something that always sits wrong with them, you
Mhm.
know, no matter if it's like depression, anxiety, or just something feels empty inside. I believe that everyone can have or should be able to have the opportunity to talk to a therapist, you know, get everything out. It's not necessary that, you know, I think it's what I'm trying to get with this is that what I really wanted to achieve with the Mental Health Focus Week when I was in boarding school is to destigmatize the idea that going to therapist is the equivalent to being seen or having the notion that this person is struggling with something really dark and deep. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think everyone, have you guys ever been to a therapist?
I mean, to add to that is, the question is, when do you
When?
go to a therapist?
When? Interesting.
like-
Exactly. So I remember we had an economics class.
Mhm.
And our teacher set up an assignment for it was behavioral economics,
Mhm.
and how do we incentivize people to do something. Basically, what my team came up with was one of these projects for mental health as well. If we make it mandatory for everyone to go to therapy on their first week at university or at boarding school at the time, so many more things would be diagnosed, so many things could be worked on.
That's true.
So many things could be, you know, seen and found before it becomes an issue that can, you know, be detrimental to your health,
Or
etc.
your academic performance.
Or your academic performance,
Yeah.
etc. Something that can, you know, like have a snowball effect
Mhm.
later on in your life. So yeah, but generally, like, I think everyone should, you know, understand that going to therapy is something that you can do at any age. It doesn't matter how old you are. You don't have to be a teenager. You don't have to, you know, my parents can go to therapy, for example, for the first time. I think that's amazing. So yeah, I think there's no like set date or time, as long as you want to work on yourself and
Yeah.
Can I ask you? I know you might have just like quickly skipped past it, but I'm really curious. When you started boarding school, you mentioned this was like a difficult time for you, but exactly what were you going through? Because I know so many people obviously relate to this, being in such an international environment and so far away from home. How
So-
was that for you?
So I think there's a lot of overlap between going to boarding school and coming to university, where it's primarily making a new social setting, making new friends can be very daunting in the beginning. Where who do you meet? Who like clicks with you? Making new friends, adapting to an environment, longing for going home. You know what I mean? Longing your place. Sometimes you might feel out of place. You don't belong. So these are different aspects to things that you can deal with, or most people deal with when they come to university. Did you guys also experience this when coming here?
Of course, for sure. Especially, like I said before, moving to a completely different environment, being away from your parents, learning to do everything on your
Exactly.
own. Of course, it's something. It's like a whole new life that you're starting from scratch.
Did you guys ever have like a really dark day, like a day where it almost settled in? Or it was
Wow,
just-
Sean, come on.
I know it's a deep question, and obviously, if you guys want to talk about it, I can just maybe share on it a little bit. But I've had those days where I'm just sitting down and I'm like, oh, okay,
What am I doing?
maybe not more of what am I doing, but more of, oh yeah, if I was back home, this would be different. Now the sun would be out.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
My friends are taking pictures and they're wearing shorts and like, you know, vests, and I'm like, I'm here and wearing a flipping mattress, you know, like. So
Exactly.
how
No.
has that? Did you guys ever have such a day?
I have a very similar situation. When I was in boarding school, same thing. In the first few weeks, there was this one day where I was in one of my best friend's room, and I started crying. Like I started bawling my eyes out, and like I started crying, and she started crying, and her roommate started crying, and one of her friends came in. We all started crying, because we were all missed home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was the first one to start crying because I was going through Instagram, and on the stories I see all my friends back home on yachts, on boats, at the beach, in bikinis, in like swim shorts. The sun is out, and I'm like at a high altitude. It's cold. It's far away from home. I'm not with my friends. Armenia was also like a landlocked country, so there was no ocean nearby. So like it was
Completely
very
different
tough. It was very
from
tough. So I was
from
like
an
seeing
island to a landlocked country.
exactly. So it was tough. That was for me when it settled in. Like, damn, I really miss my home country.
Yeah.
But that helps you, makes you grow. It makes you grow.
How did you grow? What happened after that?
You learn to accept it. You learn to understand it, and you find different ways of comforting yourself. For example, for me, what really was like the essential part that helped me grow was taking visual arts.
Yeah.
I took
Yeah.
visual arts during my IB, and all my artistic works were about the ocean. So in some way, I had it was like a cathartic experience to like use art to make myself, feel connected and in tune with myself, and like the longing from home would be not minimized, but I would appreciate it. I appreciate that I am from the island. I appreciate that I'm from there and I'm far from it. So I learned to love my home more than ever from being far from it.
What about you? Did you ever have like a rock bottom experience?
For sure, but I have nothing in mind. I'm not gonna lie. Like, yeah, not just one moment, a lot of moments, and especially after I moved here, of course, there are times where you feel very homesick, where you feel like everything is going against you. From like grades are bad, you miss home. Yeah, the weather is very bad, so you're just staying home the whole week. So there are times, of course, where it's a very important time where like you have to just calm down and reflect on everything and see how you're gonna move forward. But I don't think I have any instances in mind right now. But yeah, for
That's
sure,
okay.
that's something I think every man goes through and every person goes through. It's something very normal
Yeah.
to feel those days and feel very down on certain
It's
days.
very
Yeah.
universal for
Rock-
sure.
Rock bottom is a familiar place.
Yeah.
In that sense. For me, I'm not an international student, so I have the privilege of being close to my family and the people I grew up around with. But I also, for sure, have had my rock bottom moments, maybe in different aspects than yours. And in that moment, it's completely feeling hopeless. You know what I mean? It's about thinking, like you look at the future and you're like, oh, like what's gonna happen now? This thing happened, and I'm like, oh, things weren't like I expected and stuff like that. And you look at the past and you're like, oh, I should have done this and this. So you're just beating yourself up from both sides, and you forget that you're in the moment, and you can try to control as much as possible how you feel, because at least now that we're out of the house and don't live with our parents anymore, we have the freedom to whatever we want in some sense. So
To shape our own reality.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you can stay at home in your bed and be sad, which is healthy sometimes. We can also choose to go outside and, go for a walk or be with your friends and things like that. And for me, yeah, it really depends, because I feel like what helped me push me through a hard time that I had last year is giving myself time to feel sad. And I never knew what that meant, because I also struggle with crying and feeling sad and acknowledging that. And I would just, I don't know, just like wallow in my sadness, listen to sad music, eat ice cream, like the cliches.
And how do you come out of it?
How do I come out of it? It took me a long time. But it's more, for me, is when I'm sad, I'm mostly sad about the past or things that have happened in the past. So getting out of that is an easier solution than I thought, is just looking at the future with hope and trying to make new plans for yourself. And for example, something that really helped me is I went traveling last year on my own for the first time ever.
Oh, really?
And
Where'd you go?
I went interrailing actually through Europe. So I visited
Nice.
6 different countries, and it was after a very long year for me, first year of university and other things. So like having that to look forward to and planning it and taking too much time to pack your bags or to research what things you can do in this kind of, like, having something to look forward to is how I got out of my, you know, sad phase in that sense.
Nice. Having some goals in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to the question you asked earlier about therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know if you went to therapy, but I had therapy last year from, I think, September until March. And it was just because I had a feeling like, okay, now I'm out of the house. Now I can, change my expectations. And, maybe there's things wrong with me that I don't know, that are undiagnosed. Because, again, things are taboo to talk about, or just we don't know enough to talk about it. And I was like,
Sometimes you take it as it is normal.
yeah,
you know?
like
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Everyone
I didn't
deals
know
with it.
what was normal and what was
Exactly.
not normal, because it was so clouded by just culture
Mhm.
and upbringing and things like that. So I went, and personally, I didn't like it that much. But that's also because of the probably way I handled it, because I was also very reserved, because with people I'm not comfortable with, I struggle to open up about my feelings. So doing this podcast is a real,
Out of your
jump
comfort zone.
out of the comfort zone. So I would maybe sugarcoat things, or like, I don't know, not be as open, because I was scared to find out what was there. And I think there's also the thing about therapy is you have to be as vulnerable as possible in the little time that you have, and it's so hard. For example, I would almost always be late to therapy, like a few minutes, and then you have to calm down, and then you have to think, okay, what do I want to talk about? What's like aching me? But also discovering that takes time. Take time to reflect, as you said as well, on what's going on, and even then you can find out a lot about yourself and then go to therapy. But
Yeah, and then like find out what you need to overcome, like what
Yeah.
you're going through. So for some people it's therapy, for some people it's other things.
exactly.
So yeah, it's very important to like reflect and then know how to move forward and look at the future and be optimistic about it, like you
Mhm.
said. That's very important during that specific time, no?
Yeah. And also, I think something people forget is that a therapist doesn't know all the answers, because they don't know you. The only person who knows you as deep as you is yourself. So, like, they're not psychics. They can't guess
Exactly.
what's going on, or what.
I think primarily the
Yeah.
job of a therapist is to guide you through your own thoughts
Yeah.
and guide you to think which thoughts are relevant to different scenarios, you know. So I think I think it's good to also talk about the different resources that we have here on campus
Yeah.
at
Oh,
Erasmus.
that's definitely true.
We also have a few therapists,
Mhm.
student,
Well-being.
well, yeah, consultants, not consultants, like they just, yeah,
Yeah, there's student psychologists.
psychologist, exactly. And I remember I have an experience with one of the school psychologists because I was already talking about how everyone deserves to go to therapy, and I had like a more darker time, I think, and I was like, you know what, let me try it out. So I signed up to go to the therapist here on campus, and in my experience, I absolutely hated it. I couldn't get myself to be vulnerable or to tell this new random lady what was going through my head. I had a goal in mind, but it was almost like we weren't matching. We weren't on the same wavelength. So we scheduled to have a second session, but I had to cancel it because I was just not comfortable. And I think that's also okay to do. Just find whoever you're comfortable with. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It can also be like a friend, a family member, or whoever, your partner, whoever you feel comfortable with talking about these things. I think the moral of the story is to not like keep these things inside, not let them build up. And yeah, just understand that it is okay and it is a safe space to talk about certain aspects.
Yeah, but I guess on the topic of not bottling things inside, as we wrap up, if you're listening to this, I just encourage you to definitely start this conversation with those around you, have this talk, see what works best for you, how you can improve yourself. And Ali, what are your closing remarks?
Yeah, to conclude everything that I said today, basically, I think it's very important for every man to always reflect and think about everything that you've been bottling up, any issues you're going through, or if you're going through a tough time. It's very important to take a moment to reflect, see what you need. If you made mistakes in the past, see how to avoid them, and see how you can just become a better person and learn from your mistakes, because every single hard time you're going to go through, it's going to teach you a lesson for sure. So it's very important to learn from them,
That's
because that's what helps you into developing lots of qualities, which eventually, like qualities where they're very important for a man, let's say. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Oh, of
Again,
course.
thank you.
Of course.
Hopefully one of many collaborations together between,
Yes.
the
For sure.
associations.
For me, my closing remarks are, I think it's just, I just want to make it clear for whoever's listening that it's okay to talk about whoever or whatever you're going through, with anyone. You're not alone, and more specifically, never compare your own issues with someone else's. You might see someone, they're dealing with something in this way, meaning that I don't have this issue. But it's okay to talk about something, even if it's less of an impact or at a lesser scale. It's always good to talk about whatever you have going on, or if you don't want to talk about it, to do some self-reflection. And it is okay to have these things as long as you're committed to working on them. Yeah. What about you guys?
Do you want to go first?
No, you should start.
Okay. So, something I wrote down based on what you said is the word loneliness. And something I want to really emphasize on is that mental health is not a myth. Like, you care for your physical health, you eat your food, you go to the gym, things like that. But your mental health, your brain is working constantly. Like, at one point, you have to take care of it. And as you said, it doesn't have to be externally. You can also do it with self-reflection and things like that. And an issue that's on the rise here, I think, especially in the between men in the world, is that there is an epidemic of loneliness, and which is very sad. But know that there are resources out there to help you. There's people who want to listen to your story. People like us who are recording this podcast. I'm sure if someone has a question, they could reach out to
Absolutely.
any of us. And also don't feel shy to do it, because we're all human at the end of the day. And you have to come to a point that you have to reset the expectations for yourself. You've had a lot of great inspiration from your childhood, from your parents, other role models you've seen in life, your friends. But at one point, you have to look back and sit and be like, who do I want to be? What counts for me? What do I find important? What's not important? Is it more in a traditional sense? Is it more in a liberal sense? Is it more like it's about it being an individual, but like there's no right way to be a man. That's what I want to
Absolutely.
give away with my closing remarks. And there's also no right way to cope with anything. If you listen to this podcast and thinks it's complete, that's also fine. It's everyone's individual journey, and also don't judge anyone for what they're going through and how they cope. Just try to seek for empathy and understanding in people's journeys and stories.
Nice
That's-
words.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all we have for you guys. Thank you guys
No
so
closing
much.
remarks for you?
These are the closing remarks.
No.
Hold on, let me get into it. But yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in.
Yes.
We will be having another episode coming soon, and a really big thank you to the president of DCA here, Matthew.
Thank you
the
for having
president of AAR here, Ali.
Yes,
And
thank
the
you so
president
much.
of ASA here, Timothy.
And the vice president of ASA, Sean.
Yes. And yeah, guys, this has been a really heavy mental health episode. So I do encourage you to, if this triggers you, I hope you don't listen to it alone, because
It's too
being
late
alone
now.
is at
Too
the end
late.
is when I tell you.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
Sorry,
But,
guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes.
And yes, that's all we have for you folks.
And
Until next time.
if you want to learn more about Movember or mental health, we will link things on our Instagram, on the YouTube, and all the other platforms where we're
Yes.
posting this on. Make sure to also follow DCA Rotterdam and the Arab Association, and of course, ASA NL on Instagram. Thank you, guys.